Hi all. Today we're looking at another couple of types of market failure, common access resources and the lack of public goods. So let's get into it. Common access resources. These are rivalrous but non-excludable goods or services not owned by a private individual or firm. A couple of new terms there. We'll make sure we know what they mean. So rivalrous, that's when you consume the resource and it means that someone else can't consume it. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. Something that is rivalrous would be a fish. Once you consume the fish, others can't consume it. Something that is non-rivalrous might be an app that you download, right? If you download it, it doesn't at all stop anyone else downloading it. Others can also, can consume the app. Can consume the app is what I meant there. So that's rivalrous. So a common access resource is rivalrous. Fish are an example of that. Non-excludable, it is difficult or expensive to exclude people from using the good. So the ocean. So the ocean is so vast that we can't really stop people from fishing, right? It's really expensive to do so. So it is considered a common access resource. Now, the problem with common access resources, or the tragedy of them, is that because no one owns them, people tend to overexploit them. So this image does a decent job of explaining this. We've got one fishbowl. Everyone owns it equally, like no one owns the ocean, I guess. So everyone will just take as many fish as they like. And what happens is that the fish will be overconsumed, and that will be a problem. So we'll overproduce fishing. So these charts are not something that we need to ever produce, but should hopefully just give us an idea of how this works. So if we're using resources sustainably, then we might take less out each. We'll keep on taking more out, but they can still reproduce at a sustainable rate. Whereas if we start taking out too much, then if we take out fish above the replacement rate, then the fish can't repopulate, and therefore we'll just continually shrink the amount of fish that can be caught. So the problem is the ownership. People don't own it, so they're not as concerned about doing it sustainably, right? Because they only bear a tiny fraction of the cost if we overconsume the fish. So we'll show this on a diagram. We'll do that in a sec, I guess. This poster was up in my high school economics classroom when I was a kid. And it's always stuck with me. Only when the last tree has died and the last river been poisoned and the last fish been caught will we realize we cannot eat money. So the idea that we have to manage our common access resources sustainably. So some examples of what they are: the clean air that we have. If we pollute it too much, we lose that resource. So one producer imposes a cost on the rest of society by polluting the air. Same with the ozone layer. Forests, waterways. So here we've got pollution going into the waterways. That's from some form of production, and it is imposing an external cost on others. That's why we are going to draw this like a negative production externality, which of course you perfectly remember looks like this. So here we're looking at fish. Let's look at what the private costs to the fishermen are. So boat, nets, labour, time, for example. And the social costs are all the private costs, because these fishermen are part of society, plus the depletion of the fish resource, which that depletion of a fish resource is also a cost to the fishermen, but it's only a small part of their cost, whereas it's really just imposed on the rest of society. So big problem for society. The way we would manage this is in similar ways to how we would manage a negative production externality. So there's similar rules or similar not rules, concepts will apply, that you reduce supply or you reduce demand, and therefore you are going to start allocating resources more efficiently. Okay, second one is the under-provision of public goods. So public goods, non-rivalrous and non-excludable. So they're available for all to consume regardless of who pays and who does not. So again, we've got that terminology, which is kind of tricky. So military, all of us benefit, and we can't exclude people from benefiting from it. So if we assume that the benefit of having a strong military is that we are at little threat of invasion, of war, then that's a benefit for us. So that's non-rivalrous. If I enjoy that benefit, it doesn't stop you enjoying that benefit, right? So non-rivalrous, like the app that we saw previously. And you can't exclude people. You can't say, well, you're at threat of invasion because you're not paying any tax which funds the military. Another example, streetlights. All of us benefit from it. Extra safety, extra convenience, and we can't exclude people. So that's why these things are not provided by private companies. So private companies do not provide streetlights. They can't charge people for streetlight use. If you can't exclude people from using something, you can't charge them a price. It just doesn't work. They can use it for free. Why would they pay? So these have to be provided by the government, and that's the market failure here, is that private companies have no incentive to provide these goods, even though they are super useful. Now, a misconception that gets made, and you're going to be careful about this, especially in the exam, if there's mention of a public good, like those two words being used right next to each other like that, public goods, what we mean is this market failure. So it's very common and understandable for people to think, oh, public goods is any good provided by the government, like a public school. That's not the case. Public goods is referring to the market failure here. So market failure, because firms can't profit from providing these goods, they will not provide them. So in a free market with no government, they're going to be underprovided. That's why the government has to step in. So just to explore this a bit, the problem with public goods and why the government has to provide them is because we have the free rider problem. So that free riding, they enjoy the use of something without paying for it because they can't be excluded from it. And this is 100% the reason firms do not provide these types of goods. They don't make streetlights and try to charge people for them. The government pays for them because otherwise it will not happen. Okay, that's all we've got on these two types of market failure. So I'll see you in class. Thank you.